If you want to hear the 3 hidden reasons that Amanda Young defies Jigsaw near the end of her story, then stick around to the end of this video. One of Jigsaw's goals with his victims was to convert those who passed his tests into followers of his methods, and one of his most loyal followers was a woman named Amanda Young. Welcome to Horror History. My name is Professor CZ's World, and in today's lesson, I'll be analyzing the life of the 3rd major Jigsaw disciple, Amanda. Out of everyone to help out Jigsaw over the years, Amanda has probably the most troubled past, so let's take it back to her childhood to try to understand her. While there is no canon explanation as to why Amanda gets into a life of crime, there is cut content from Saw 3 that suggests that she was abused by her father, who used to lock her up in the dark for hours on end. It's unlikely that any future film will explore Amanda's past, so that seems like a reasonable explanation. I mean, I can live with that. Her first canon appearance comes in the 1990s. She was addicted to heroin and would often shoot up while listening to The Used. Now that is their best album, so I guess not all hope was lost on her, but others would not agree. She eventually attended a recovery clinic called Homeward Bound, but her issues were so bad that her doctor, Jill Tuck, considered her to be a lost cause and dropped her from treatment. It was during her time at Homeward Bound that she first got on John Kramer's radar, because he was married to Jill Tuck at the time. It was also most likely where she met another addict named Cecil Adams. One night, the two planned to hold up the clinic after closing to steal some medication to relieve their withdrawals. Even when Cecil had second thoughts about committing the crime, Amanda still convinced him to go back and carry it out, and Cecil's desperation eventually led to the accidental miscarriage of Jill Tuck's baby. As far as we know, Jigsaw never knew that Amanda was involved with the incident, but police did. I'm guessing it has something to do with security cameras at the clinic. Although she wasn't technically guilty of anything in this instance, one of the cops, Detective Eric Matthews, saw to it that she was punished by faking the evidence needed to get her convicted of a drug possession.
You sent me to prison. I was guilty of a lot of things, but not the drug charge you framed me for.
She was eventually released, but did not realize that the worst of her punishment was only just beginning. One day in May of 2004, she woke up with the taste of blood and metal in her mouth. A contraption is bolted to her head, and a videotape starts playing and explains that it will open and rip her jaws apart if she's unable to obtain the key in 60 seconds. The key is located in the stomach of her cellmate, and she has to do the unthinkable in order to obtain it. She gets the key just in time, and she was congratulated by the puppet from the tape.
Congratulations, you are still alive. Most people are so ungrateful to be alive, but not you. Not anymore.
After escaping the building, she goes straight to the police to report what happened to her and tells them that she's grateful and that Jigsaw had helped her. When she returned home after everything, John Kramer is sitting in her apartment and he tells her that her life has just begun. That's when she starts training with Jigsaw for the next 5 months. One behavior commonly seen in recovering addicts is feeding their withdrawals with something else. And due to the fact that Amanda was coming out of a chemical dependency on drugs, her brain had to find something else to latch onto. This may explain why her loyalty to John, who was helping her overcome her problems by teaching her his moral code, was so fierce. She assisted him in putting together one of the most complex games to date, which would take place in October of 2004. She uses a pig mask to disguise herself, a symbol that is perfect for her because the year of the pig in the Chinese zodiac stands for rebirth, and Jigsaw believes that she has been reborn as a better person.
The marks on your arms, they're from another life. We'll leave that life behind.
Jigsaw makes her promise her allegiance before handing her an envelope containing a file on a photographer named Adam Stanheidt. She sneaks into Adam's apartment and knocks him out using an injection. Then, she's able to transport his body to the site of the game using a dolly. Somehow nobody sees this or finds it suspicious in any way, and Amanda shackles his leg to the pipe, puts him in the bathtub, and leaves the key sitting on his chest. This was one of her first mistakes as John's apprentice. Amanda was supposed to place the key in a place where Adam had a chance to get it before it washed down the drain. This would have made Adam's game more winnable, but Amanda had a nasty habit of rigging things against the participant of each game. I believe she does this because she's become so dependent on Jigsaw's care for her that she doesn't like the idea of anyone else surviving and becoming his disciple. She essentially wants to be the only one so that she can have all of John's attention. And we call this jealous girlfriend syndrome. Rule number 1, never try to reason with someone who has this condition. After Jigsaw places himself at the center of the game for surveillance, Amanda puts on the final touches by turning off the lights and closing the door. Adam would end up losing the game, and his punishment was to spend his remaining days in the bathroom. But the winner of the game, Dr. Gordon, had promised to go back and save Adam. So Amanda, not wanting there to be another survivor, sneaks back into the bathroom to finish off Adam. Jigsaw would eventually discover her transgression, but before he did, he believed that she was fully rehabilitated by surviving the reverse bear trap, and brought her into Jill's practice as evidence that his methods can turn a person's life around in ways that Jill's medical treatments could not. Amanda was proud to have recovered from her addiction even after Jill had given up on her.
It works. It's real. He helped me.
However, at some point over the next year, possibly due to the trauma of what she had done to Adam, she began self-harming. Also during this time, she helps Jigsaw develop a new game with two major contributions. First, she puts together a test for the man who had wrongfully imprisoned her, Eric Matthews, in order to see if he could test his restraint and solve the Jigsaw case without resorting to dirty police work. Then, she was asked to take part in the next game in October 2005, which involved a group of ex-convicts who had all been set up by Matthews, but who were all guilty of other crimes. She would essentially play the role that John played in the first game by secretly placing herself in the center of it so that she could ensure that all of the rules are followed. If only she were still around, we could give her a job with the Houston Astros. The game challenged its participants to find the antidotes hidden around the house as a deadly nerve gas seeped into their systems. It is likely that Amanda already had been treated with the antidote before going into the game because she had already passed her test and would need to stay healthy in order to facilitate the game. However, it is possible that she was partially being tested again because she had once more demonstrated her inability to cherish her life when she started cutting herself. Now, I personally think that she was given an antidote because she doesn't show the same symptoms of the nerve gas as the others, but Jigsaw was still making her repent for her self-harm by putting her in a dangerous situation with a bunch of ex-convicts. She also doesn't seem to know all the secrets of the house. For example, she's surprised to find that the trap door under the safe is locked later on. But despite her theoretically being in less danger than the others, Amanda would endure more suffering than ever before when the Nerve Gas House game didn't quite go according to plan. When the Nerve Gas House game begins, Amanda acts as if she's in a panic to help sell the idea that she's a participant. Yeah, Amanda's a pretty decent actress, unlike Adam. Amanda uncovers the tape with the instructions for the game and explains her past experience being in a Jigsaw trap.
He's testing us. He wants us to survive this.
The first death occurs when a man named Gus ignores Jigsaw's advice not to use a key in the door. The others escape the room to begin searching the house, and Amanda turns on the lights. The next death occurs when a man named Abi fails to retrieve the antidotes from his trap inside of the furnace. When one of the participants, a boy named Daniel, asks why Amanda was chosen for the game, she tells him that it was because she was a junkie, which is a clue about one of the things that they're supposed to be figuring out, which is that each of them was framed by the kid's father, Eric Matthews. She also explains that she was included in the second game because she took up self-harm as an unhealthy coping mechanism. They find the next trap, which is intended for Xavier, a drug dealer. His test is to metaphorically crawl through the same pit that the junkies he dealt to did, by finding the key to the antidote in a huge pile of needles. However, Xavier abuses his position as the biggest guy in the room and forces Amanda to do his test for him. He tosses her into the needle pit, which is one of the most horrifying twists that could have possibly gone down for her character. Amanda had already been through so much suffering in order to overcome her addiction, and now she was being thrown back into it, literally thrown into a world of needles and desperation. There's also the risk for Amanda to go through a relapse, which is when a drug user or someone suffering from an addiction slips up and returns to the negative behaviors because of it. And that can be a very dangerous thing, because after being off of the heroin for a while, her tolerance is likely to change and put her at risk for an overdose. We don't know what was in the syringes in the needle pit, but for those reasons and the fact that many people are already afraid of needles, this is widely regarded as the most uncomfortable trap in the entire Saw franchise. At least it wasn't a pit filled with various Lego pieces though.
Amanda has fallen into the river in Lego City.
This was absolutely traumatizing for Amanda, and this is just speculation, but I'd point to this as the reason she becomes so unforgiving towards victims of the traps from here on out. She finds the key with 7 seconds to go, but that's not enough time for Xavier to unlock the door with the antidote. I think the fact still remains that he was nearly able to escape without suffering or rehabilitating at all, and this stuck with Amanda for the rest of her time working with Jigsaw. Soon after, the group splits up to continue searching for the antidotes, and the clue about Daniel's link to Eric Matthews is discovered.
What are you doing with him? This is your father?
So the question that I have here is, did Amanda know that Daniel was Eric's son? We've already seen that she has the ability to act when she pretends to be surprised that she's back inside of Jigsaw's game, but was she acting when she said this line?
Tell me that's not your father.
I think she is, and here's why. First, the fact that she created the test for Eric Matthews.
Hello, Eric.
She likely would have known a lot about him in order to do this, and at the very least read his profile and known his most basic family info. I also think her reaction when Daniel almost voluntarily reveals who his father is early on tells us that Amanda knew all along. Let's roll that clip.
I mean, I've been in trouble a few times, you know, in and out of stuff. My dad's He's a real hard ass. Yeah, he's probably got half the city right now looking for me, just so he can kick my ass for disappearing on him.
Yeah, probably.
She seems kind of panicked when he's about to out himself, and then relieved when he doesn't. We don't get to see much of her reaction when the truth is revealed though, because moments later, one of the other contestants chokes on the nerve gas and passes away in Amanda's arms. There's no time to mourn, however, because Xavier can be heard calling after her in the distance. She surveys the house and discovers that he's already taken care of Jonas, and will likely be after her life next. She grabs Daniel and takes him to the first room, where they barricade themselves for safety. Together, they're able to move the safe and uncover a trapdoor leading down to the basement, just before Xavier knocks the door down. The basement is a series of tunnels and rooms, one of which is the bathroom where she had brought Adam 1 year earlier. She leads Daniel there, with Xavier close behind. The two devise a plan that has been used time and time again in the Saw series, pretending to be dead, which is ultimately how Daniel gains the upper hand on Xavier. Once again, Amanda's acting skills shine right here, probably one of the underappreciated strengths of her character. With them being the only two survivors, she gets Daniel the antidote out of the safe and saves his life. He's still very weak, and when the doors open after the 3 hours has expired, she takes him to Jigsaw, where he's given an oxygen mask and safely stowed in another safe in Jigsaw's workshop. But before this game was over, Amanda had one more job that would put her face to face with the man who had wronged her so many years ago. Amanda later returned to the nerve gas house, once again disguised in robes and a pig mask in order to carry out the final part of the test for Eric Matthews in case he failed his test. He would fail by using police brutality to force John to take him to the location of the game. Amanda waited for him in the bathroom and injected him with the anesthetic before he could react. She shackled him to the pipe where she had once shackled Adam and leaves behind a tape which explains that this was her training, that she would eventually be the one to carry on John's work. She leaves him in the bathroom, echoing Jigsaw's signature phrase,
"Game over."
Thinking he'll probably die there, but to her surprise, she finds that he's able to escape by crushing his foot and sliding it out of the shackle. She hides when she realizes he's on the loose, but he manages to catch up with her before she leaves the house. The two get into a skirmish in which she immobilizes him even further by attacking his weak ankle. At first, she's willing to leave it at that, but when she hears what he yells out after her, she stops in her tracks.
You're not Jigsaw! You hear me? You're nothing!
Remember, Amanda had nothing after coming out of her life as an addict and latched onto John, so her training to become Jigsaw meant everything to her. Hearing those words, "You're not Jigsaw," hurt her more than anything else possibly could have. She literally falls to her knees at this remark, and that's when she decides that she will not let Eric Matthews live and goes back to finish him off. She's also starting to believe that not everybody who survives a trap experiences the same rehabilitation that she did, and I think she realizes that Matthews hasn't changed after making it out of the shackle in the bathroom. The movies don't actually show what she did to him, but we can assume it's pretty bad, because Amanda actually believes that Matthews is dead for the next 6 months. During this time, she continues her apprenticeship with Jigsaw, but he begins to fear that she's not fit for the job after seeing her emotions get the better of her a couple times now, first against Adam and now against Matthews. Jigsaw devises a new test for Amanda to test her self-control and see if she's really capable of bearing the Jigsaw name, or if Matthews was right and Amanda Young was not destined to take over the role of Jigsaw. Amanda is asked to help prepare for this game because she doesn't know that she's being tested along with the other participants. I'm sure all of us can relate to finding out about a test on the day of. Not a good feeling. Not a good feeling. Also helping to put together the next game is another Jigsaw disciple, Mark Hoffman. Amanda and Hoffman develop a rivalry. They both want to be the one to take over John's work after his passing, but neither wants to share that honor with the other person. She also develops an even closer bond with John, who is getting physically weaker by the day because of his cancer, and requires Amanda to push him around in a wheelchair and basically be his personal caretaker. She begins living in a small room at the Gideon meatpacking plant, which would be Jigsaw's new base of operations from here on out. She would also have to take on the responsibility of setting up John's game, since he was no longer able to do much physically. However, Amanda, still shaken by what she had endured at the nerve gas house, was not in the mindset of giving people a second chance, which is the whole point of Jigsaw's games, to give people the chance to rehabilitate. She instead started to see them as vigilante acts of punishment, and made her contraptions into unwinnable death traps rather than games. Her first victim was a man named Troy, who was a fellow patient of the Homeward Bound clinic. He was placed in a classroom, and yes, you can see that I took some inspiration from my decorations here in the horror history classroom. I should have spent less time praising Amanda for her ability to act and given her more compliments on her interior design skills. But yeah, she put these chains into Troy's flesh and made him yank them out of his body in order to escape. There was also a timer, and this nail bomb would go off and kill him if he was still in the room when it expired. Only problem was that the door was welded shut, so Troy never even had the chance regardless of the outcome of his game. There was also a game for one of the police detectives, a woman named Allison Carey. She was tasked with reaching into a beaker of acid to retrieve the key to her trap, but Amanda had rigged this game as well, putting in the wrong key, resulting in the death of Allison. In her spare time, Amanda practices her mechanical engineering skills and builds a collar device that would be used in the next game. But at some points, the pressure of her training to become the next Jigsaw successor and the guilt about all of the horrible things she had done to her victims caused her to have a relapse. Not a drug relapse, but a self-mutilation relapse. After promising Jigsaw to leave that behavior in her past life, she knew she had to keep it a secret, and did so by cutting her inner thighs and wearing jeans every day to cover it up. One day in April of 2006, during one of the final preparation days for this next game, Amanda gets into a little quarrel with Hoffman. She mockingly asks him when his test will be, and he tells her he doesn't need to be tested because he did not take his life for granted as she did. Amanda boasts that he might as well get used to her because she's not going anywhere, but Hoffman doesn't seem so sure.
You sure about that?
John tells Amanda that it's time to get Dr. Lynn Denlin from the hospital, which means the next game is about to begin. Amanda shows up to the Angel of Mercy hospital and waits until Dr. Denlin is alone in the changing room. She locks her in and then attacks her and uses a wheelchair to transport her back to the building where John is being kept. When Lynn wakes up, Amanda brings her into the room with John, who explains the rules of the game. Dr. Denlin's collar is linked to John's heart rate monitor, so if he dies or she moves out of range by leaving the building, the collar will explode and kill her. Her goal was to keep John alive until Lynn's husband, Jeff Denlin, finished his trial in another area. But Amanda and Lynn did not know that Jeff was the other person being tested. By doing this, John was also able to test Amanda. John was aware that Amanda had rigged many of her tests into execution devices, so he was testing her will to let Lynn Denlin's test go uninterrupted. If Amanda were to interfere and do something that resulted in Lynn's death, then Jeff would likely come through and get revenge on Amanda. So this was just as much Amanda's game as it was Lynn's or Jeff's. She had to learn to control her emotions and let the game play out, but Dr. Denlin would not make that easy for her. Hoffman delivers Jeff to the beginning of his game, and Amanda would keep tabs via computer monitors and periodically update John on his progress. After examining him, Dr. Denlin's suggestion is that they take John to a hospital because his brain was herniating. This suggestion quickly angers Amanda, and she's already letting her emotional nature get the better of her. She tells Lynn that a hospital is pretty much out of the question. Amanda is so ill-mannered and physically threatening when speaking to Lynn that the dying John Kramer actually feels the need to intervene.
Amanda, our doctor can't do what's being asked of her. If you're threatening her, the rules of our game have been made very clear.
Each game has a rule keeper. It's John in the bathroom game, Amanda in the nerve gas house, and John again here in the death collar game. But that would soon go out the window when John goes into some kind of life-threatening seizure episode that would force Lynn and Amanda to work together. John loses control of his body and thrashes around violently to the point that Dr. Denlin is unable to restrain him enough to help him. She calls for Amanda to help and hold him down and administer oxygen. Eventually, he stabilizes, but the scare hits Amanda hard, and she has to leave the room with tears in her eyes. We've already established that Amanda's emotions are her weakness, and I think seeing her idol, Jigsaw, the man she views as her savior in such a vulnerable state, brought down her psyche even further. And all of the experiences she would go through would push her closer and closer to the edge of a breakdown. Even after that though, Amanda still insists that they must perform the operation at the meatpacking plant rather than moving to a hospital and, you know, getting them all arrested. Lynn reluctantly agrees and gives Amanda a list of materials needed, which includes an anesthetic and a power drill. I can only imagine how awkward it was in the checkout line. When she gets back from getting the supplies, she discovers Lynn taking a peek at the traps and weapons stored in the area outside the operating room and mockingly challenges her to try to do her best Jack Torrance on her, explaining that if she does, John could easily rip the heart rate monitor out and turn Dr. Denlin into Dr. Pile of ashes. Lynn is still not confident that these makeshift tools will get the job done, and Amanda tells her,
"You'd be surprised what tools can save a life."
Which is one of Amanda's most intelligent lines because of its double meaning. She's giving Lynn the tools that she'll need to help John, but also talking about how the tools in front of them, the traps, help to save her life by making her appreciate life again and get off of drugs. Before the surgery, Amanda checks back in on Jeff's progress and updates John on his whereabouts. He had just made it through the first room, and Amanda would soon face the first obstacle in her portion of the game as well. He asks her to retrieve an envelope with her name on it in the desk drawer in the other room. Since John had about as much energy as a horror YouTuber the day after Halloween at this point, he had Hoffman place the letter there. We never find out what the original letter was supposed to say though, because Hoffman pulls the old switcheroo and leaves his own letter in the envelope. Before Amanda goes to retrieve it, the brain surgery takes place, and she fills the role of Lynn's medical assistant, during which she's unable to cope with the seriousness of the situation and has to look away for most of it. At the end of the operation, John slipped into a critical state, causing his heart rate to plummet and his brain to fire off a random memory of him and his then wife. When his heart rate stabilized, he was still in the hallucination of his wife, causing him to touch Lynn's elbow and say, "I love you." And that caused Amanda to do this. Amanda storms off to her bed, but instead of playing with her creepy doll, she opens up a secret box full of sharp objects. Ah, maybe this is why she got into the used. Found a box of sharp objects, what a beautiful She cuts herself again to distract herself from the emotional pain she was going through and bandages up the wounds to keep them a secret from Jigsaw. When she comes back into the room, she's in full jealous girlfriend mode, and despite the 15-year age difference, she starts weirdly kissing his neck. Now, I don't speak woman, but my guess was that this was her way of telling Lynn, "Back off, bitch!" Lynn tells Amanda that he can't hear her, so Amanda freaks out and pulls a gun on Lynn. And it turns out that Jigsaw was actually awake, and he tells Amanda off and asks to be left alone with Lynn, which is probably another phase of the test. John knew that this would make Amanda jealous, but he needed to push her to her limit to determine if she'd really be capable of handling her emotions going forward. To further this, the next time Amanda comes into the room, Jigsaw tells her they're fine, they don't need her, which sends her into an even darker rage. But John knew that in order for Amanda to take over for him, she would have to be self-motivated, and that means not just acting out of her love for John. In other words, she had to become less emotionally dependent on him, and the only way to do that is to let go of that connection that was established when he saved her life from the drugs. If she could contain her jealousy, John would be convinced that she'd pass the test. But he wasn't counting on what would happen next. Amanda went to go find the envelope from John that Hoffman had interfered with. She reads the note, which says,
"Amanda, you were with Cecil the night Jill lost Gideon. You killed their child. You know it, and I know it. So do exactly as I say. Kill Lynn Denman, or I will tell John what you did."
Hoffman knew about this mistake that Amanda had made back in the 90s, but he also knew how Amanda felt about John. She would be heartbroken if John ever found out that she was involved in the death of his child, so she has to seriously consider caving into Hoffman's demand and killing Lynn Denman. She already disliked Dr. Denlin because of her perceived relationship with John, but this note from Hoffman motivated her even further and might just be enough to push her over the edge. However, Amanda Young would not go down without a fight, and she would find a clever way to get back at Hoffman before the grand culmination of the Death Collar game. After being blackmailed by Detective Hoffman, Amanda secretly made a very important move to get revenge on him. In a flurry of emotions, she goes to the cell where Jeff and Lynn's daughter, Corbett Denlin, is being kept. Corbett has been placed there by Hoffman on John's orders as an extra incentive for Jeff to make the right choice after escaping from his game. Remember, Amanda doesn't know that Jeff and Lynn are married, so she probably doesn't realize that Corbett is Lynn's daughter. She probably just knows Corbett as Jeff's daughter. But she does know that Hoffman may very well be the sole survivor by the end of the day, and tells Corbett the following.
Don't trust the one who saves you.
Just remember that because I'll come back to it shortly. Not long after, Jeff completes his final test and he's basically about to be on his way to the operation room. Since Lynn was able to keep John alive for all of it, he says that she's free to go, but Amanda has other ideas. She decided that her best move given the circumstances is to give in to Hoffman's demands and take out Lynn. John commands her to unlock Lynn's collar and let her go, but she defies him. Her emotional state has spiraled into such a frenzy that I think Amanda actually starts to believe that she knows better than John. I imagine that her line of logic is that John would be more hurt by discovering that Amanda was involved in Gideon's death than he would be by Amanda disobeying him. She also really doesn't like Lynn, so this is the easy choice to make. John tries to convince her that her own life is in Lynn's hands, but that just ends up upsetting Amanda even more. Rule number 1 of jealous girlfriend syndrome is to never try to reason with the person. John brings up the victims he left alive that Amanda tried to kill, like Adam and Detective Matthews, but Amanda claims that those people deserve to die, and what she did was not different than what Jigsaw does. She believes that Dr. Denlin should not go free because she had not rehabilitated, and through her eyes, nobody had. There are obviously two factors at play here, Amanda's beliefs and Hoffman's blackmail. I do think that Amanda genuinely has doubts that John's methods work. As I mentioned earlier, she had experienced firsthand how someone like Xavier could get through the test without rehabilitating, and she sees it again when Detective Matthews makes a huge sacrifice to escape from the bathroom, but still tries to get revenge on Amanda and doesn't seem to have changed. Not to mention the fact that she eventually relapsed and started cutting herself again, even under Jigsaw's training. Hoffman's letter was really just kind of an extra incentive. So Amanda shoots Lynn, and shortly after, Jeff comes in and sees that his wife has been killed and shoots Amanda. In her final moments, John reaches out to her and explains that this was her test. When John had said he was testing your will to live and keep someone alive, he was referring to Amanda, not Lynn. He knew that she was making her games unwinnable, but since his remaining days were very limited, he decided to give her one last chance out of desperation, and she had failed him. So Amanda passes away, a victim of her own actions on April 28, 2006. Despite the fact that she had failed her test and would be unable to take over for John after his passing, she was still able to help him in one small way after his death. John would only survive a couple minutes longer than Amanda, and that left Mark Hoffman as the man who would take over Jigsaw's legacy and carry out the rest of his requests. However, like Amanda, he too was corrupt and strayed from the original teachings of John Kramer. However, as one of the last men standing, he had too much power and was nearly unstoppable within a matter of weeks. Amanda actually may have played a key role in helping to stop him though. By telling Corbett Denlon not to trust the man who rescues her, she was able to get the message out about Hoffman indirectly. This is never confirmed in the movies, but we can assume that after Hoffman rescued Corbett after the conclusion of the events at the meatpacking plant, that Corbett went on to tell the FBI that someone warned her not to trust her rescuer. So this could be the reason that the FBI refuses to stop investigating him even after his name is cleared. The reason that he eventually gets caught and has to go on the run, which eventually leads to his downfall. None of it may have happened if not for Amanda Young. I'm still not going to call her a hero or anything, but throughout most of her story, there are multiple factors at play in her head. So hopefully this video helped you understand her mindset and some of the choices that she made. If you want to hear more about how her story connected with that of Hoffman or other Saw characters, then click that video on the left for some additional episodes of horror history, and let me know who you'd like to see me cover in the next lesson. Remember to subscribe to CZ's World for new horrors every week, ring that death bell for notifications, and I'll see you in the next one. Assuming we both survive.